Innovation Ultimate is a brand new big box for a 15-year-old game that brings the whole thing up to 11. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald. In this episode, we're going to talk about a new edition of an older game. Innovation Ultimate is the game that we're going to talk about today. Innovation came out in 2010, but this is a brand new box that streamlines things. It's got all the expansions inside, but it's streamlining things and making sure that rules are consistent across. There's a brand new rule book. It's a new edition of an older game. What's added to the game, in addition to some art and clarifications and things like that of the rules, is that there's a brand new expansion in the game as well called the Unseen expansion. This is going to be a first look at innovation because this is a deep game. There's a lot going on here, and with 5 expansions, I haven't delved deep enough really to talk about the impact of each one. So what we're going to talk about today is a first look. I'll explain a little bit about the game. I'll talk about what the Unseen expansion adds to the game, and give you some ideas about how this thing works. Innovation Ultimate from Asmati Games is a game that works with, well, 2 to 4 or more players. You can play in teams. You can add more than 4, 5, 6 players if you want to, by using the extra expansions to add more cards to the decks. So you can play with lots of players, but it gets crazy the more players that you have. And so team play might make that a little bit more strategic if you're playing 2v2 or 2v2v2 if you've got 6 people around the table. It's a game that I would say 14 to 16-year-olds could figure out. The rules are pretty simple, but the strategy maybe is a bit more advanced. It is pretty deep, and there are lots of fun decisions to make along the way. Games take 45 minutes to an hour to play. It was a little bit longer in the playthroughs that we've had because we were still learning the game and the cards. Let's take a deeper look at Innovation Ultimate from Asmati Games. I mean, here it is. Here's the big box. Everything is organized. I've sorted. They give suggestions in the rulebook even for how to sort out the cards and the expansions. So I've kept the expansions separate and kind of put each one in, well, separated the 11 ages. There's 11 ages now in this game. I've separated those out into 2 wells for each one. They do suggest that if you're running low on space on the table, that you could put the cards in here in a vertical direction, and it can be used as a card holder when you're playing the game. This is a civilization building game where you're not playing on a big board and battling against other players in that way. There's no miniatures. You're going to be using stacks of cards to represent your civilization. And in the base game, now with the ultimate version of the base game, there are 11 ages, and the 11th age, Prudence, is representing kind of near future technologies. You can see it goes from prehistory to the modern age and postmodern, the information age. So you've got cards that represent the internet and things like that. So that's where it's a little bit thematic. It is, honestly, it's really more of an abstract game, but some of the cards and the actions that they allow do make sense based on the name of that card. One of the cards in the base set, for example, that came out when we played through the game was Gunpowder, which was an Age of Discovery card, I think, if I remember right. But it allowed you to take other players' castles. So if you had gunpowder and the other players had castles on their board, you would be able to take over those cards. This is a medium weight game. The rules are fairly straightforward, I think, but the strategic combinations of cards are a little bit more complicated. I would put this at a medium weight. It's not super heavy, although, as I said, this is a first look. I haven't played every single expansion. So those combinations might make things more complex or complicated. There's 2 ways you can win a game of innovation. One of those is to race to grab these achievements. So these are numbered achievements, and if you get a certain number, 5 in a 3-player game if you're not using the expansions, but it changes based on the player count and the number of expansions in play. If you can collect a certain number of achievements, that's going to end the game and you're going to win. How do you collect those achievements? Well, you have to have a certain score on your board. Players are going to have this little player board that has a space for achievements on one side. So if I collect that, I'm going to put it under my card like this so that you can just see that I've got that achievement that's been accomplished. But I need to have a certain score, 5 times the number on the card is what we're talking about here. So we've got a 1. I need to have at least 5 points before I can grab that achievement from the middle of the table. But if I take that achievement, no one else can get it. So in a way, you're kind of racing to grab those things if achievement victory is what you're trying for. That's what we found in the games that we were playing with the base game. You're really trying to get those as quickly as possible so that the other players couldn't grab the one that you wanted or didn't have the score to grab the one that you wanted. You also have to have a card from that age face up on top of your board, on top of your tableau. So you're building a tableau. There's going to be 5 stacks of cards plus your little scoring card that I showed you earlier. So here, if I've got this hiking, this is from the Unseen expansion. Hiking is an age 6 card. And if that's on top of one of my stacks and I've got enough points, I would need 30 points to grab this Enlightenment achievement. And then I could take that and put that under my player board. That's going to count towards that total of 5 in a 3-player game. You can also win by having the highest score. So there are lots of cards that allow you to tuck these cards underneath on the score side um, of your little board that you have. This is kind of a cheat sheet too. So you've got this board, and on one side you're putting the achievements, on the other side you're putting the score. So here I've got an age 1 card that's worth 1 point. 1 point, pardon me. The gunpowder card that I mentioned earlier is one where if I take that player's castle, it's going on this side. I'm scoring that card. So if it's an age 2 castle, for example, I'm going to get 2 points for that one. And that did allow me to get some of the early achievements in the game. How do you get to that end point? Well, you're going to deplete these decks of cards, and there are even cards that allow you to junk, they call it, not discard, but to junk an entire stack of cards. And if it's asking me if I have a card that allows me to draw an age 8, there's no 8, then I'm going to be drawing from 9. So you're going one higher, and then the game's going to end if I have to draw a card that's higher than 11. So if it's asking me to draw a 12 card or I have to draw an 11, there's no 11 cards left in this deck, that's the end of the game. And then you're counting up scores instead of the achievements because nobody's accomplished enough of those achievements to get to the end game. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about gameplay here. This is a first look. I'm not going to go through all the expansions, but I will talk a little bit about the Unseen. But the game rules are fairly simple, and the rulebook actually has a section on how to teach the game and how to run through some sample turns so that everybody kind of gets these concepts. There's a bit of weird vocabulary, I would say, in Innovation, and maybe that's because it's an older game and it speaks to the era in which it was developed. But on your turn, you're going to take 2 actions, and you've got a choice of 4 possible actions that you could take. One would be to draw a card. So you're going to look at your tableau, the highest number that's on top. So if I had this 6 and I took a draw action, I could draw from the 6 pile. If there's nothing left in the 6 pile, I'm drawing from 7. So the draw action is very straightforward. You're taking a card into your hand. You could take a meld action, and that's kind of some of the funny vocabulary. A meld action is to play a card to your tableau. So melding just means playing a card. So if I've got a green card, it's just going to go on my green stack on top of that. You could also take one of these achievements. So an achievement action, to score an achievement, you're using one of your actions on the turn to do that. Taking one of these achievements or meeting the criteria for one of these special achievements is an action that you could take. And then the final thing is what's called a dogma action. And what that means is that you're going to use the ability on one of the cards in your tableau. And these do play out in an interesting way. This was probably the biggest deal in the game. The fun part, really, was taking these dogma actions as opposed to just drawing cards and putting them on your stack. And the reason for that is this. When you take an action from your card, you're going to look at the symbol beside the action, and that symbol is the symbol that's most prevalent on the card. So in the case of hiking, it's leaves or nature. So you're going to look at that number of leaves that you have across your entire tableau. Players who have the same number or a higher number of leaves can share in your action. So it's like a follow action almost. If they do that, though, you get to draw an extra card. So you have that decision of if you have enough leaves, for example, in your tableau, do I want to take the action and give my opponent an extra draw? How's that going to deplete the deck? Because then maybe if I'm doing a draw first as the dogma action, then is that going to cause the deck to be depleted and my opponent's going to get a stronger or a higher level card? There are also some boxes on these cards that are kind of darker than the rest. These are called demand actions. And a demand action, it starts with I demand. I demand that you do this. And then you read this out to the other players. So a demand action is one that forces another player to do something. Now, players who have a lower number of the symbol in their tableau are the ones who are vulnerable to a demand. So if you have a higher number, you're not going to be forced to do this thing. Now, you can't share the demand actions. It's the second part of the card that you can share. But I can demand if a player has a lower number of symbols in their board that they do something. And in this case, I get to steal an achievement, and that's going to go into my safe. And the safe is something that's new in the Unseen expansion. And that's basically the game. You're drawing cards, you're playing them to your tableau, you're taking actions here, and you're trying to get those achievements or get that high score. Some of the actions on your cards allow you to splay cards, it's called. So if it says splay to the, well, it's my left on this side, but it's your right. Splay to the right, you're going to move your cards like this, and now you have some extra symbols when it comes to those demand actions and being able to share in another player's dogma action. Once you've splayed cards like this, the next one on top of the stack goes here, so you still get to keep these two leaf symbols in your tableau. You just won't have this ability anymore. There are multiple directions in which things can be splayed, and some cards change that. So you might splay it this way. That's the least powerful one. If you're splaying to the left, splaying to the right gives you two symbols. You can splay up like this, or you can splay, they call it splaying askew on some of the cards, allow you to do it this way. And now you've got all of these icons in your tableau. So it does start to spread things out a little bit. This game is not really a table hog. The biggest part are these decks. And when you add expansions, the expansions will have cards of each age, but they're a separate stack from these other ones. So you're not shuffling them in. You can recognize the expansion cards easily because the backs are a different color and they have a little expansion symbol on them. What does the unseen add? I mean, primarily you're adding a safe to your board. So let me show you here. The player board that I showed you earlier, it has like hints about the actions and things. It's like a little cheat sheet, but you're putting your achievements on one side, your score on the other. There's also this more advanced board when you're playing with the expansions. I don't know how well you can see this. It's got a space for forecasting, which is an action that you can take on some of the expansions. But here's your safe, which is for the unseen expansion, which is about hidden things, escape rooms, cloaking. If you do get to place a card in the safe, it's going face down like this with this number facing up. So you've got this face down, you're showing this number. These represent extra achievements that you could pull off that the other players don't have access to, which really changes the game. In the base game, if you're trying to win that achievement victory, you're racing to get these 10 cards, as many as possible, before your opponents can grab them. But with the unseen now, you've got some achievements that you don't nobody else can steal them from you. So if the 6 is already gone, I've got a level 6 achievement right here, and I could pull this one off. It could, like the expansion, could cause you to have duplicate achievements once you're playing with these things. So now there's 2 6 achievements, and if I'm going to try and get a second one, I need a higher score, right? It's not going to be 30 anymore. I think it's double to get the second one if I remember right from the rule book. What skills are you practicing just based on my first look at this game? What skills are you practicing when you play innovation? It is a game where there is quite a bit of flexibility required. It gets pretty chaotic. Like I love the 3-player count because it wasn't too chaotic, but there was a chance you could make a demand action, but another player could share in the other part. So it gave a little bit more of that push pull than a two-player game would. Um, but you have to be flexible in it and be able to adjust your approach because things are changing. The action that you want to take, you might not be able to take it on your turn because another player stole that card from your tableau. So there's a lot of interaction, and that requires you to think on your feet. And when we're talking about that flexible problem solving, what we're talking about is fluid reasoning. Fluid reasoning is that ability to, it's logical thinking and problem solving and being able to adjust your approach on the fly. You've also got some quantitative reasoning, reasoning with quantities. Math reasoning is happening here because you're counting up those symbols and you're comparing the symbols to the other players. You're trying to figure out that score that's going to allow you to accomplish, to collect the achievements that you want. You're looking at the other players and trying to figure out, well, if I don't get this six this turn, is someone else going to take it before my next turn based on the score that they have? And what they're able to do on their tableau. So there's a lot of math reasoning here. It's not too complicated and it's fun, honestly, but there's some quantitative reasoning as well. And then you've got the cards themselves that there's some reading and a bit of verbal reasoning, kind of understanding how these cards operate and how the cards in the various tableaus are going to interact with one another. I won't say final thoughts here because we are talking about first impressions of a game that I haven't really played enough to dive deep. But I will say at the outset that Innovation was a game that we finished our game and immediately I wanted to play again. Every game is going to be different here. There's a ton of replayability, especially once you add all the expansions. But every comment that I've seen about Innovation says you don't need the expansions, those are extra. This is a game that's deep enough and replayable enough just with the base game. I'm a bit of a completionist, maybe, so I like to have the expansions. And I really liked how you've got this big box that streamlines everything, makes it easy to teach other players, and makes sure that all the expansions interact together very well so that you can mix and match however you want. I like that the big box keeps everything organized, and it's a pretty good deal, honestly. You get this base game, a great base game that immediately, like I said, I wanted to play again. Plus, you get all of the expansions in one package with a good storing solution that doesn't take up too much space on the shelf. So I like that too. Uh, I can't speak too much to the strategic depth that's added by the expansions, but certainly you can change things up and customize this game in lots of different ways just based on my first run through and my quick skimming of the cards. And the new expansion, The Unseen, which adds that safe, is one that it's pretty easy to add to the game, honestly. So it's a good first expansion, I feel like, that you could try out with players who are just getting familiar with Innovation because it doesn't add too much, but it changes up your strategy because you may not be racing as quickly to get these achievements because the other players could achieve them from their safe too. It really adds a new dynamic. It does change up the game a little bit, but it doesn't add so many rules to overcomplicate things when you're playing Innovation. Are there downsides to just based on my first playthrough of Innovation? I mean, the main one is it's not the prettiest game. I do like the card backs and the architecture that's on all of the card backs, but it's so plain. Somebody said it looks like maybe it was designed on Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Paint, but it's I mean, the cards aren't as pretty. Well, you've seen the reviews that I do over here, and I always like to make my games as fancy as possible, but this is not the prettiest game. And yet, that did not detract from the fun. I think with the high number of players that it would be quite chaotic and less strategic and maybe more like a party game than a strategy game. But you can play with teams to increase that strategy and reduce that level of chaos. This was just a really good time, and as I said, as soon as I played it, I wanted to play it again. I think it might compete with Earth for wanting to do that 10-game challenge, and I'm a little over halfway through my 10-game challenge of Earth, so maybe I can play 4 more games and then get on with it with Innovation. Really, this is something that it's an older game, but I think it's kind of a classic. Really, it's one that I hadn't heard about until the Ultimate Edition came out. It's got a super high rating on Board Game Geek, and so I thought, well, let me try this out. Lots of people are saying good things about this game, and what a fun game, and what a great package to be able to kind of have access to all the expansions, but have everything that's streamlined so that it works together with the most up-to-date set of rules. So if you have any questions about the other expansions, maybe for innovation or about later playthroughs, if you have more specific questions about the other cards here in the Unseen deck, you can, of course, leave a comment in the comment section below the video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go. Previous ones are already up there. Brains on Games is the Blue Sky page and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, the X handle. We're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video, you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.